COVID hit, I was working for Praxis. We run 2 12-person startup accelerators every year, and we were gearing up for our largest community gathering of the year. So we gather 300 people from our community together every May. And I was last year supposed to take more of an operational role in what we call our summit. And we have a really small team. I think we have 9 or 10 at this point on our team. And so it was already all hands on deck, and we were ramping up to finish these 2 classes and then start up 2 classes. They kind of intersected at Summit. So there were a ton of huge things kind of happening in May. Long story short, decided to go home. My family was in Minnesota at this point, and so moved home. And all the while, we are like 6 or 8 weeks out from Summit, and we're still trying to plan it. 4 weeks out, we decided to move our 300-person summit virtual. Basically, it just became a 4-week sprint, all out for everyone on the team. I kind of fell into this like tech producer role. I handled like all of the attendee uploads and session uploads and making sure, and this is a 3-day event for, I think we had 350 people come last year. And like, just to give you a picture, it's like 400 sessions, individual sessions over the course of those 3 days. My main takeaway from that was like, the Lord had orchestrated our team so well because everyone's giftings had to step in like the perfect way to make that event happen. And it was really beautiful, but we were all just like weary afterwards and
used up.
Yeah. And we didn't realize that we were kind of just getting started. What the rest of the summer looked like was focusing on our academy program, which is normally a week long in August, became 8 weeks long. So we had a 4-week sprint, and then basically had 3 weeks to kind of turn around and go full force in this other direction. I think that was what really like set the stage for the summer was, as I think about kind of my mental load, I was displaced out of New York, and it was a choice, and I am really grateful I had somewhere to go, but it wasn't actually a choice I wanted to make. I think it was the right one, but it wasn't the one I wanted to make. So I was out of New York, and basically we were just in an all-out sprint for, 4 or 5 months by the time August rolled around. Then on top of all of that, there were some really tough family dynamics that showed up primarily in July, when George Floyd was killed. That was like blocks away from my family's home in Minnesota. And we actually weren't in Minnesota at this point, but just knowing like it was blocks away in Minneapolis. And obviously our country just like, the conversation just blew up. And I think some really healthy ways because we weren't having the conversation before. In my family, there are very different viewpoints. I have a family of 4. My brother's 21, and then my parents, and me. And yeah, we have different viewpoints, and I felt like I was learning a ton, and the Lord was really breaking a lot of wrong held views in my mind and just like opening my eyes for the first time. And so I feel like I was going through this like deep lament of like, I have missed it. I have like totally missed the racial inequities in our country. And I was just like lamenting that I had been a part of it and like not understood. And our team at work was talking about it and talking about how to like the work that we needed to do as an organization and how we could support our community in doing that work as well. And so it was just like such a live conversation there. I have a really, really faithful friend who was just like honest with me and helping me learn. I was heading back to New York in August, took 10 days off of work after that 4-month sprint, whatever it was. And yeah, it was just really struggling, and stopped and stayed with some friends along the way. And we just had dinner, and I was so looking forward to it because it was the first time that I had like literally been with anyone outside of my family in person in 5 months. That was sweet in and of itself. Then we ended up like talking for hours. And I think the beauty of it is that I literally didn't bring anything into that. I've described it a couple of times as I feel like I just sat there on the couch and was like bleeding. It was like hurt. That hurt is the best way I can say it, is after those 5 months of like all out sprint at work, really unhealthy family dynamics, just being displaced for so long, not seeing people, and just like the state of our world. I literally just like was hurting, and I didn't feel like I brought anything into that conversation. And these friends were so faithful to ask like, how are you and how was this summer for you? And I was super honest. I like talked about it. I was like, I'm really burnt out. I'm really tired. I don't have much left at all. And I'm really thankful to be heading back and thankful to like have time off. But at the same time, like I know those things aren't going to fix it necessarily. They'll be restful, but they're not going to fix everything. And so we shared about how we were doing. The conversation was awesome. It just kind of like flowed between topics. And there wasn't ever a moment that I was like, oh, I have a word from the Lord for this person, or they have a word for me, which I don't want to like knock at all. But there was such a like simplicity to it that it was literally just like 3 friends really enjoying each other's company and just like being together, even though, like I said, like all I felt like I brought to that was my like, I'm really broken and tired and have nothing to offer right now. And yet looking back on that, that was a huge highlight of the past year. And I can't even couldn't totally put my finger on it for a long time, but there was just something about it that felt really holy. I was talking with one of the friends later, how many months later? Like literally 3 or 4 months later, and found out that the Lord used something about that conversation to speak into a decision that friend was making. Something about the way that I showed up in that conversation, the Lord used to speak into a decision that he was making and change that decision pretty drastically. And I was so humbled for so many reasons. And it came so alive for me that it's like, that's what Paul means when he says I can boast in my weakness. Like that to me made that completely come alive for the first time. Because I think we say it and we know, and we're like, yeah, my weakness, but there was something so palpable to realizing that I had nothing in that moment. Like literally I had nothing going for me. And I was honest about that. And the Lord used it to do something pretty remarkable that I had nothing to do with. And I think that's the cool thing for me, is that I didn't have anything to do with it. To be able to sit in that moment and now look back on that moment and realize that it was because he was shaping all of these new things in me and humbling me in ways that I needed to be humbled. And I don't know if I would have been in other ways. And so it's a mercy that he would bring me to that spot and let me be broken in that way. My hope for moving forward is that this is what I'd remember next time suffering comes along.